Can changing the microbiome reverse lactose intolerance? Well, my ears and my eyes perk up simultaneously as someone who has been lactose intolerant his entire life. When I was a kid, I would go to the ice cream shop with my friends. I would cheat, go and have dairy ice cream, and I would want so much to have that closeness with my friends and my peers, and it would just destroy me afterward. Hey everybody, it's Jason and Alexandra here on the Switch for Good podcast, here with another episode. Dotsie is not with us this week, but we are bringing it home in the fourth quarter with some great information in this episode. We're going to be talking about whether or not you can get the right nutrients if you are breastfeeding as a vegan, because I have so much experience with that, having had so many children myself as a male seahorse. We're going to talk about breast milk. Alexandra is going to answer two YouTube questions, one of which, actually, she's going to touch on inflammation from a previous episode because she's on top of it and remembered that I had a question about inflammation. We're also going to discuss whether or not you can change your intestinal microbiome to stop being lactose intolerant. Very interesting research from Indiana University. All that and more anecdotes here on the Switch for Good podcast. Let's dive in, Alexandra.
Jason, first, I just want to say that the audience might have noticed that we haven't put out an episode for a month, and there were several reasons for that, partly because of the holidays, and then also because of the fires. And you live in Los Angeles, and you had to evacuate. So tell us, how was that, and how are you dealing with it now? Because the air must be pretty dirty there, and I know you want to be as healthy as possible while still living there.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Alexandra. It's been a wild 2.5 weeks. It's 3 weeks at this point, and I was actually on a plane from Costa Rica as the wildfires were starting, and a good friend of mine actually evacuated my animals. So we were away for about 2.5 weeks. I just got back home to my house in Santa Monica 3 nights ago. And so it's been an interesting reintegration process of feeling safe at home. And in order to feel safe at home, because I'm literally a few blocks from the Palisades, I'm in North Santa Monica, and so the decimation of the Palisades is literally right across San Vicente Boulevard. That's getting very granular for any Angelinos, but very, very close in proximity. And as I was evacuated, I was reading all of these reports of the EPA and local health officials talking about not only how compromised the air quality is, but the water quality. So I took some steps. I actually bought a hazmat suit and got a buddy and came to clean up the entire house because it was covered in ash and soot. So that was step one, was just cleaning the ash and the soot and the debris off the house. After that, it was a matter of, okay, I need to tackle the air quality. Well, what can we do there? I'm going to get 3 HEPA activated carbon air filters in here. There's a brand that I really like called Air Doctor that I've actually used for years. I have one of their industrial units and then 2 other units. So I have 3 air filters going, running 24/7 in here. I also have a humidifier because when I reoccupied the house, the air inside the house, it wasn't smoky, but it was very dry and stale and just kind of that smell when the windows haven't been open in 2.5 weeks. So we've got the humidifier going, we've got the air filters going. But one step that I see a lot of people in Los Angeles not taking right now is wearing a N95 or KN95 N100 mask going out, because the issue is, even if you're not near a burn zone like me, when the winds come or there's any activity of the street sweepers or cars driving by, all of that ash and toxic particulates gets put back into the air. And what we're seeing are higher levels, almost like post 9/11, of things like asbestos, lead, formaldehyde, toluene, BPA, different plastic particles. And so even if the AQI, the air quality index, looks low, I think yesterday in Santa Monica, it was like a 17, which is incredibly low. The AQI does not account for particulate matter, particularly toxic particulate matter in the air. So I've been wearing a mask every single time I go out and walk my dog Bella, take my outside clothes off, no shoes inside the house. It's been really intense to take all these precautions. And not only that, because of the exposure I had when the wildfires were first happening, I've been just taking a whole bevy of supplements to try and detox and protect my lungs from anything I might be inhaling.
Tell us about those.
Yeah, that's been a whole nother deep dive. So, with detoxing from heavy metals or toxic particulates, two of the best things we can do is a liquid zeolite. It's a mineral complex that helps us to actually detox from heavy metals. And then I've also been taking fermented chlorella with chlorophyll. That's another thing in terms of any things in the liver that build up in terms of heavy metal content, helps us to naturally and gently detox. When I say detox, I think some people think it might be a little harsh, but the combination of liquid zeolite and the chlorophyll and chlorella has been a daily practice of mine. And in terms of lung protection and lung rejuvenation, I'm doing a lung formula that includes reishi mushroom, chaga, mullein leaf. Mullein is actually one of the simplest and easiest ways we can protect our lungs. There's also slippery elm in there. I'm doing high levels of omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA, and also liposomal glutathione, which is good for protecting the lungs and lung health. I also have, some essential oils going. I have like a eucalyptus and peppermint blend. I'm going a little bit maybe overkill. Maybe some of the listeners are like, man, he's going full on. But reading all of the stories and talking to people who survived wildfires, major wildfires, it's kind of scary what could happen to the body if we don't take these precautions. And, I have a history of cancer in my family. I'm very sensitive to any risk of developing lung cancer or anything like that. So I'm doing everything in my power to really protect myself right now.
I think that's so informative. Thank you. What are you doing about working out? Are you working out at all? Because that means you're inhaling even more of the air.
Yeah, I'm not going outside. I'm the only time I'm going outside is to go on a grocery run, to charge my electric car, or to walk my dog Bella. So I've moved all of my workouts, Alexandra, inside now. So I do calisthenics and sort of a kettlebell routine, and I've just moved everything inside. So working out of my bedroom now instead of out on my back porch.
And how long do you think you're going to be maintaining this kind of regimen?
Well, that's a great question, and I also have a little secret I'm going to share with you and the listeners. I am actually going to be moving out of LA after 18 years.
Oh, and is it because of these fires?
It's really this has created a level of long-term concern that I'm not comfortable habitating here for a long period of time. And the reason is I've talked to a friend of mine who survived the Colorado wildfires. I think that was back in 2018. And she said it took a full year for them just to clear out the toxic debris, the burned out structures. The scale of what we've experienced here in LA, especially between the Eaton and the Palisades fire, is far beyond in terms of acreage what they experienced in Colorado. So we're looking at,
Because
yeah,
the toxicity, because it was so many homes.
exactly. So we're looking at not only the consistent compromised air quality, because every time the trucks go in to remove that debris, it's
Mm.
going to kick all of those toxic particulates up into the air and the atmosphere over and over again. Not to mention when it rains, like we got rain 2 nights ago, it sucks all of that contaminated toxic particle matter into the soil, which particularly could lead to long-term water contamination. So I I don't want to feel like I am living in a place where the water's not clean to drink, the air's not clean to breathe. That gives me a level of anxiety that for the long term I don't want to deal with. So I'm actually going up in a few days, driving up to Northern California, and I'm going to be moving my life up to Northern California. Yeah,
Wow. That's really exciting. I
yeah.
lived in the Palisades for 15 years and we sold our home 2 years ago, which it
Wow.
burned. It burned completely to the ground. And so did the home that we had before that, which was in Malibu. So both of those places, which I no longer own, were burned. So I have a lot of neighbors and things. And I moved to Oregon temporarily just to help my mom. And the idea was that I would come back because being an actress, I felt like LA was sort of the hub of my work. But this fire has really made me reconsider. And of course, I'm hoping to be here for many years, that my mom will live for many years and will continue to need us. Um, but it really does make me consider. And I think if I think you're doing a smart thing, and I think that the scale of the destruction in on the west side is so huge that the whole feel of the west side will be changed for years to come with all the construction going on. It's going to take years to rebuild. And so there's going to be so much of that toxic dirt being lifted up and things. So I think it's very exciting, really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's time for a new chapter. Like you, I came out to be in entertainment and do my thing in TV and commercials and music. And after 18 years, it's been a glorious 18 years. And it's interesting how life will present us with an opportunity to step into a new chapter through sometimes unexpected circumstances. So here we are, just welcoming the new chapter of life.
Yeah. And now technology has allowed us to be creative anywhere. And like I had an audition yesterday. I just put it on tape. The producers have no idea where I live. They're not even shooting in LA because so many things. I was thinking that maybe the only good things that people need to start shooting are disaster movies. They could really use all that. Oh, I'm actually serious. That's, I guess, is that, this would be an opportunity for them to make a lot of disaster movies, make the most of what's going on there, the destruction, not have to do a lot of CGI.
I was going to say, yeah, it's already set up for them, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, well, I'm so glad. Thank you. I live in Oregon now, and there are wildfires here for several months a year. So I'm going to be taking your advice in terms of the things that you're doing when the summer comes and we have to deal with that.
Yeah. And I think as climate change rolls on, this is a whole nother topic we could cover or not cover in the podcast, but it's this idea of as the climate is changing and severe weather events become a more regular thing, what precautions do we take as humans to protect our health, protect our families, level up our preparedness? Because I also realized, like, in terms of preparedness, there's a lot more that I can do moving forward too.
Yeah, good. So sounds like you've learned a lot, and this is really, it's a catalyst for a really exciting change.
Yeah, including maybe having a baby one day. Not me having a baby, not me, but I know that was an awkward segue. I attempted to segue
into your breast milk discussion. Well, let's go there. I'm definitely not having a baby, but I am curious about, and we get a lot of questions about that. Is it healthy for a vegan mother to breastfeed?
Yeah, this is one of the things when I talk to friends of mine, and in recent months, I've had a bevy of friends, 4 friends who have had kids. It's been like a baby mania, and some of them are vegetarians, some vegan, some not, and so it's been an ongoing discussion of a lot of concern and fears that women have about getting the proper nutrition to their newborn child. So I dug into this because it's still on the table for me to possibly become a father in this life. And I think about, having been vegan for 27 years now, how do I expand my knowledge base? So big myth that's out there is, it's not healthy to breastfeed as a vegan mom or to have a vegan child. So I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive. And the first one that I found was actually some research out of Amsterdam. So there was a study that was presented at the 55th annual meeting of the European Society for Pediatric Gastroenterology. And this study from Amsterdam UMC conducted research finding that lactating mothers who follow a vegan diet compared to mothers with an omnivorous diet showed no difference in milk concentrations of important nutrients like vitamin B2 or carnitine, despite these nutrients being found in the highest concentrations in animal products. So they actually go into the sort of background of this, where in the last 4 years, the lead researcher, Dr. Juncker, said, I didn't know this is interesting to statistic. The number of vegans in Europe alone has doubled in the last 4 years. And the maternal diet greatly influences the nutritional composition of human milk. And with the rise of vegan diets worldwide by lactating mothers, there are concerns about the nutritional adequacy of their milk. Therefore, we wanted to know if the milk concentrations of specific nutrients are different in lactating women consuming a vegan diet. So let's talk about these 2 nutrients that they wanted to highlight, which are very important. So vitamin B2 is also known as riboflavin. It's an important cofactor for enzymes involved in biological pathways. So previous studies have shown that a shortage of vitamin B2 in infants can lead to anemia and neurological problems. And we've talked about carnitine. Its primary biological role is energy metabolism. So carnitine shortages in infants can lead to low blood sugar, as well as a possibility of heart and brain dysfunction. And carnitine intake and plasma concentrations have previously found to be lower in those with vegan diets, which is cool because we find that there is no difference in the milk concentration with these two nutrients.
So even though mothers might in their own bodies have lower concentrations of B2 and carnitine, when their breast milk does not show a difference with omnivorous mothers.
That is correct. There was no noticeable difference detected in the study between carnitine and B2 concentrations between these two study groups, which is amazing.
I thought it was interesting that they used those two, because I thought when I first saw it, I thought, oh, they've forgotten. They're actually looking at B12 and they've just made a mistake. And,
yeah.
But then as the whole article and the study went down, they kept saying B2. And I'm like, wow, I never even heard that B2 could be an issue for me as a vegan, or even carnitine. I was under the impression carnitine wasn't something you really wanted to get a lot of. Are you familiar with these two nutrients, and are they that important to study?
I mean, riboflavin I've definitely heard about. It's not something that is typically categorized in the realm of concern for vegans. Usually when you talk about a vegan diet, we talk about omega-3 fatty acids, like I mentioned before, DHA and EPA. We talk about vitamin B12, as you mentioned. We talk about D3 and K2, which can be difficult to get from plant-based food sources in some cases. But I've never really seen B2 be highlighted in this way, or carnitine. So I'm not necessarily an expert on this in terms of the sources of riboflavin. I know that in terms of fortified grains, we talk about, whole grains, organic grains. You do see vitamin B2 there, right? Whole wheat bread, cereals, things like that. But carnitine is one that I don't see mentioned very often. I see L-carnitine in some protein powders and workout supplements in terms of performance nutrition, but I've never heard it in relation to neurological development for infants. This is new to me.
So it sounds like what the paper is saying is that the breast milk of a lactating mother who's vegan gives certainly B2 and carnitine enough to the baby. Did they discuss any other vitamins, or were those the only two that what was their overall impression of vegan mothers?
Those were the two that they primarily focused on. I did find a different paper, a systematic overview of vegan and vegetarian diets and breast milk composition. This was published in April of 2020, and the abstract talks about the question of whether or not the nutritional composition related to maternal diet shows adequate nutrition in mother's milk for vegans. And here they talked about reviewing 13 publications. It's sort of an overview looking at dietary patterns of breast milk. And here they do talk about the importance of supplementing with essential fatty acids and micronutrients, primarily vitamin B12. So here it says, regardless of dietary choices, nourishment and adequate nutrition have a significant impact on breast milk composition. And here, with vegan and vegetarian mothers are capable of producing nutritionally valuable milk for their infants as far as appropriate supplementation is chosen. So here, talking about, again, essential fatty acids and vitamin B12, which they're saying you need to get from exogenous sources.
Okay. Which, by the way, I know that doctors also recommend folic acid to women who are pregnant, no matter what they're eating. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that a vegan mother can produce very healthy milk. But she does need to be aware of supplementation in some cases.
Absolutely. And I think there's another layer to this too that I want to get a little deeper down the geek rabbit hole on nutrition. So when we can go to get our blood panels tested, which I've talked about in a previous episode, I like to do every couple of years. Years ago, I got tested for a genetic mutation called the MTHFR gene mutation, which means that my body has a very difficult time methylating B complex vitamins, in particular folate. So when we talk about supplementation in terms of B complex vitamins, it's important to make sure that we are getting our sources from methylfolate or methylcobalamin, which is a source of vitamin B12, as opposed to cyanocobalamin, which is a non-methylated source. If you are of the interest in going to get a blood test and getting tested for the MTHFR gene mutation, you may not be synthesizing, methylating B complex vitamins adequately. I was doing this for years, Alexandra, and had no idea.
Wow.
So it's important, if we do have this gene mutation, we test positive for it, especially if you're a mother, expecting mother, nursing mother, to take methylated B complex vitamins. Standard vitamins will not cut it because your body cannot methylate it on its own.
And if someone doesn't have that gene and they take a methylated B, is that still okay?
So far as I know, I'm not an expert on that, but I don't think that there's any, from what my doctor has told me. I see a tremendous doctor here in LA called Dr. Alan Green. He's a integrative medicine doctor. I don't know that 100% for sure, so I can't say that with complete confidence, but I don't think there's any downside to it.
Okay.
But the point is that we want to not just take supplements. Supplements, especially good ones, are expensive, right? We pay for what we get. And for years, I was taking supplements that were non-methylated and just urinating them out because my body couldn't process them.
And did you have a low B12 count all the time and you couldn't figure out why?
That is accurate.
Yeah.
And low folate.
The folate, right, exactly. Oh, great info. Thank you. Anything else? What else that you found about breast milk and vegan mothers, or that you want to share?
Those are the big ones. It's really just about making sure that you get the proper supplementation, and in doing so, it shows that really there's no discernible difference. Like I talked about that Amsterdam study. I think the biggest thing, though, is to go and get your blood tested, get a blood panel test, spend a few $100s and go to a doctor and have it done, because that will show you, especially as a woman who wants to get pregnant or is planning on doing that, what supplements you might need to bolster prior to pregnancy. So I'm just a big fan of, instead of going to the health food store and thinking, I don't know, I might need B complex vitamins, I might need D3, find out for sure, and then have an accurate time getting your body the supplements that you need.
Yeah. And get good ones. Make sure that they're decent. It's kind of hard to know, but if you go to a health food store, a lot of times the folks there will tell you their thoughts on certain brands. But great info. Thank you.
Did you know that as we age, our bodies produce less collagen? This vital protein that keeps our skin firm and supports muscles and joints starts to dwindle, leaving us with a few more laugh lines and a bit less bounce in our step. But there's good news. Yes. With Veg Vegan Collagen, you can naturally replenish this essential building block and get your glow back. Through innovative extraction techniques from nutrient-rich broccoli and carrots, they've crafted 100% plant-based collagen that effectively reduces the signs of aging. It supports skin hydration, enhances joint flexibility, and strengthens hair and nails, so you can look and feel fabulous. And the best part, there are no chemicals, no preservatives, and absolutely no animal products, just pure plant-based goodness. So stay youthful, stay active, and choose Veg Collagen. Elevate your daily routine and let nature help you shine from the inside out. You're just going to go to vegnutrition.com. That is VEDGE nutrition.com, and use code S, the number 4G, for 30% off. Right? You got it. One more time, vegnutrition.com, and use code S4G for 30% off your order. Now back to the episode.
So do you have some YouTube questions from us, Alexandra? We have 54,000, I think, YouTube subscribers. Now it keeps growing every year. And sure enough, whenever we put out a video, especially podcast clips, we get a bevy of really interesting questions from our dedicated listeners. So I'll pass the baton to you and have you jump in on answering these questions.
Well, first I want to answer a question that you asked, and you mentioned it in the intro, that you asked, I think it was the last episode we taped, where I was talking about inflammatory foods. And you asked if acidic foods cause more inflammation, and I didn't know. And I said I would find out more for this time that we taped. And so here we are, and I have an answer for you. The answer is yes. Basically, eating more acidic foods does raise inflammation, but there's not a ton of evidence that it's because of the acidity of the food. And let me just go a little deeper and make sure that everyone knows that I am not an expert either, but I did do some research on this. And I think the conclusion that I come to will still help your health. So talking about acidity, let's just talk a little bit about what it means. So there's acid and alkaline foods. And to know how acidic a food is or alkaline a food is, we have to explain the pH scale. So which ranges from 0 to 14, and 0 is the most acidic. 7 is neutral and 14 is the most alkaline. So our bodies are happiest a little alkaline at a pH of between 7.35 and 7.45. So an average of 7.4. Remember, 7's neutral. And if you go over 7, you're getting into the alkaline area. And some people say that the more acidic foods we eat, the harder the body has to work to be more alkaline because it's struggling to stay in the 7.4 pH zone. But as I say that, there really hasn't been a study showing that the foods we eat change the pH of our blood. Okay. It will change. And I don't quite understand this, but it is true that if we do have a lot of acidic foods, it takes our kidneys more work to clear that acid. So it is important not to stress our kidneys or our liver, these cleansing organs anyway. So that's one reason to keep our foods less acidic. Now, acidic, what is that? Because acidic foods aren't the ones that necessarily taste acidic. Like when we think acidic, we think immediately lemon. Yet a lot of us have gotten the recommendation that first thing in the morning, we should have hot water and lemon to make our body alkaline, which seems counterintuitive, right? But acidic foods are foods that change in the body's acidic in the body once it's ingested. So lemon is about a pH of 2 outside the body. But once it is ingested, it becomes more alkaline and it has a pH that's well over 7. So it becomes quite alkaline. So that's really important to know. Don't just taste a food and go, oh, that tastes like acidy, so it must be acidic in my body. Now, other people think that eating alkaline foods will prevent or fight cancer. But what might be happening is that the foods that are more alkaline in our body are just better for us. So what are those foods? Alkaline foods are fruits, non-starchy vegetables, nuts, seeds, tofu, tempeh. And acidic foods are meat, dairy, sugar, alcohol, refined grains, aspartame, coffee, carbonated drinks, all things that, well, besides, I think if Dot's were here, she would say maybe coffee was good. And there are some good things about coffee for sure. But, those things people definitely know aren't healthy. And so I think that when we talk about acidic foods versus alkaline foods, the reason that they might be healthier is because they're just healthier foods. The alkaline properties of them might not be part of that. I remember, Jason, did you ever have anybody, or do you drink alkaline water?
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up because during this water crisis right now that we mentioned post wildfire, I've had to buy water. And so I'm actually drinking alkaline water right now because it was kind of the only thing available on the store shelf.
Okay. So I'm not that big on that because of the fact that a lot of it's in plastic bottles and it's expensive. And I'm a tap water person and I use a filter because it's the most environmentally sound. And also I do believe that just because the water's in the bottle, you don't know. It's actually less protected health-wise if it's in a bottle than if it comes from your tap. So anyway, if people are interested, we can do a deeper dive for a future show on alkaline water, but that's not something that I have chosen to drink. But I have checked my urine for acidity. You can really easily on Amazon get these little strips and just pee on them and get the pH of your urine. And you kind of want it to be like this certain middle ground, 7.4, right? And I wasn't really, I guess I was just trying to make sure that it stayed there and that if it got too acidic, that meant I was eating not as healthily. So I guess Jason, how I come out as a whole on this is that acidic foods are less healthy, and that's why they tend to be inflammatory. And why alkaline foods like fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and tofu and tempeh might be helpful in combating cancer. And it might not be because they actually change the acidity of your or out the pH of your body. Yeah,
That's great.
That would be
That's
my
awesome.
recommendation.
No, that's good. It's interesting too. I don't know how you feel about sort of intuitive eating, but I know that for me, as I've gone through my journey of eating plant-based for 27 years now, when I first started my journey, it was really focusing on a lot of vegan junk food, really, if I think about it. Which a lot of it, is probably pretty acidic. I mean, I think about, going and eating a whole vegan pizza and vegan burgers and things like that. And remembering that I didn't feel all that good. So I know that for me, it's interesting to hear you talk about the science and the pH levels of food, because naturally when I eat more alkaline foods, I just feel better and more vibrant. My digestion's better. I feel less sluggish and more energy. So it's interesting to have everything just backed up always by science.
Yeah. And they did, it did say that there had been no studies that shown what you eat will change your pH balance. It's very difficult to change your pH balance. You just can't go on a juice fast and then your pH balance of your body, of your blood changes. Your urine will excrete more acid if you're eating more acid. But I just want to emphasize that.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And that was me answering your question. But we have a question from a YouTube subscriber. And it was, what are some plant foods that can help with hormones during menopause? Now, I'm in menopause, so it's actually very apt that I answer this question. And anybody who wants to go even more deeply in this question should listen to our episode 68 with Dr. Neil Barnard. It was called Balance Your Hormones, and he wrote the book on hormones and plant-based diets called Your Body in Balance. But I want to start by talking about a study that was published in the journal Menopause in 2022 that found that, and I was surprised because I take hormones, that diet intervention is about as effective as hormone replacement therapy for reducing hot flashes caused by menopause. That's a pretty big deal for people. There's a lot of people who are nervous about taking hormones. And so this is important information for you all. So what this found was that lower fat, plant-based diet rich in soy reduced moderate to severe hot flashes by 88%. And the women lost on average about 8 pounds in 3 months. So they're not really sure which factor actually helped, but it seemed that the combination of avoiding animal foods, reducing fat, and they added half a cup of soy daily. Those were the key elements. And also has to be noted that because of weight loss, that weight loss has been shown to help women with especially hot flashes. So these were 84 women who were getting 2 or more hot flashes per day. Now, there was a control group that had no diet change. So you don't also know if the postmenopausal women were just, it could have been a placebo effect too. So this study was okay, in my opinion, but not all the way there. There was a better study, I feel, that in 2001 that took 50 women and gave them 40 grams of isolated soy protein, and then another 50 women and gave them a placebo, which was casein, which we know is a protein that's found in milk. And the number of hot flashes of the women in the soy group were reduced by 33% within 4 weeks. Now, we don't know if the casein might have, the milk, because milk has estrogen in it, right, might have exacerbated the hormones, the hot flashes, but it certainly does give a plug to eating more soy and not dairy, not including dairy. Now, Harvard Medical School, they have a Center of Excellence in Women's Health, and they funded a randomized crossover study. And this is a crossover study, means that one group did it one way for a certain amount of time, and then that same group changed and became the other group, the control group. and they were able to, so you could compare against yourself essentially. And they did a study where they gave women a half cup of unsalted soy nuts, one a day, and there was a 50% reduction in hot flashes within 2 weeks. So these are really, I think, impressive numbers. And so what I've gathered from reading about these studies is that soy in some form, whether it's soy nuts, edamame, soy milk, have been shown to help with hot flashes. Now, hot flashes are not the only thing that women deal with in menopause and perimenopause. Vaginal dryness is something that I personally have dealt with, and I use estrogen inserts to help with that. But apparently, soy isoflavone gels that you also insert in the vagina seem to do just as well. So for women who are nervous about supplementing with estrogen, you might want to try soy isoflavone gels for vaginal dryness. And the other foods that I'm giving a big plug to for soy, but other foods that really have been shown to help with especially hot flashes are the omega, it might be because of the omega-3s, but flax seeds, walnuts, and almonds. And then increasing fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. And other studies have shown, not only the first study that I mentioned, but other studies have also shown that lowering fat and meat is important to mitigate the effects of menopause, the negative effects of menopause. And of course, when you lower fat and take out meat, then you get other great things. So that is, I hope, answers our listeners, our YouTube audience's question. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I'm curious, with all of the benefits of soy, Alexandra, and you going through this process of menopause, is there any concern for eating too many soy products? I feel like maybe some listeners might say, okay, well, I'm going to go get the organic soy milk, and I'm going to get the soy yogurt, and I'm going to eat tofu and tempeh. And, is there any danger or mindfulness to the number of servings one would want to eat or not overdo? I'm curious about that. For you specifically, what have you experienced with that?
Well, I did actually. I was eating a lot of tofu. Mm-hmm. And we had David Goldman on, and he told me I was eating too much tofu.
Did he say why though?
I think it was because of the estrogenic effects or the fight. I think it was, and also because too much of anything is just too much, but also that, yes, you can overdo it with soy. And I was eating like a block a day. That's a lot. And so what I did is that, remember the last show I shared with you, that soy-free tofu block? It's made of beans. That's why I now go between tofu and these bean blocks that sort of have the same properties. They taste like tofu, meaning they're tasteless. They have the same kind of, what's it called? They feel and taste of tofu, but they are not tofu. They're made of beans, which are, it's so healthy to eat more beans. So yes, I think we can. I don't know the exact amount, but guess what? Next show, I will look into it and see for men and women, whether they're menopausal or not, what the limits are for soy in their diet.
Awesome. Very, very much looking forward to that. Thanks, Alexandra, for answering that question. We normally have Dotsie cover this last segment, but Alexandra and I are going to tackle this one. We are always on the lookout for interesting research or things that are going on to highlight to you. This is something that came out of Indiana University a few years back. And when I found it, I thought, I have never seen this question before, and I've never even thought this was a possibility. And the lead article here, the headline is, "Can changing the microbiome reverse lactose intolerance?" Well, my ears and my eyes perk up simultaneously as someone who has been lactose intolerant his entire life. This is something that, growing up, this wasn't even a question of whether or not it could be reversed. It was an attempt at, I remember as a kid, to preface this, trying things like goat's milk, which didn't work. Trying things like, in the early 1980s, Lactaid pills and things like that. And nothing ever worked because of the severity of my lactose intolerance. So curiously, this question of whether or not we can manipulate the human microbiome is a fascinating one. There's a lot of differing opinions and research on how much probiotics can influence gut flora. This one is a article written by a professor, like I mentioned, from Indiana University named Pat Foster. And to preface this, I want to say that the prevalence of lactose intolerance continues to increase year after year. I think we're at about 68% of the global human population that is lactose intolerant, meaning, as we know, this is interesting because, after childhood, if, around 2/3 of the world's human population loses the ability to digest milk, we also know that 100% of non-human mammals also lose this ability after weaning. So the ongoing ability to digest lactose, which is the main sugar in milk products rather, into adulthood is a biological abnormality, meaning people who have lactase persistence, they are the mutants.
Yes, there's only 15% of them.
They are the mutants.
Yeah.
So the issue with lactose is that it can't be directly absorbed into the intestinal tract. And so it has to be broken down into smaller component sugars by an enzyme called lactase. So the new evidence in this article talks about that the decline occurs not because the genetic code is changed, but because the DNA is chemically modified so that the lactase gene is switched off. Interesting. Modifications that affect gene activity while leaving DNA sequences intact are called epigenetic. So this epigenetic modification that turns off the lactase gene does not happen in lactose tolerant or lactase persistent individuals. This is fascinating, right? So the doctor who dove into this research is a microbiologist and became interested in the causes of lactose intolerance because, he's got a friend of Norwegian descent, and this person is apparently lactose tolerant their whole life, but all of a sudden at age 45 became permanently lactose intolerant. We hear about that too. We hear about certain humans who have the ability to digest lactose because of their genetics, but then lose that ability later in life, either spontaneously or because the small intestine is damaged by disease or other traumas. In this case of his friend he's referencing, there was a high dose of pharmaceutical antibiotics that apparently changed this person's small intestine. So it's interesting to think about then, is it possible to change this? So we talk about lactose intolerance is mostly due to your genetics. In my case, on my father's side, which is Latino, which is Spanish and Puerto Rican, definitely affects Latin culture. So I know I get my lactose intolerance from dad. Thanks, Pops.
And you mean that when you say thanks, because, actually having this intolerance led you to be vegan.
It was one of the factors, Alexandra. That is absolutely correct. Because avoiding dairy, and when I say avoiding dairy, I do want to come clean here. When I was a kid, I would cheat, and I would go to the ice cream shop in Baskin Robbins with my friends. Shout out to John Robbins. And I would cheat, and I would pay for it in the sense that I would go and have dairy ice cream, and I would want so much to have that closeness with my friends and my peers, and it would just destroy me afterward. But yeah, absolutely, this dance with dairy my whole life has definitely been a huge factor in my veganism. It goes deeper into the genetics of this, which is not necessarily like the point of this article, although we'll link to it in the show notes if you want to check this out. But I wanted to get down to the microbiome part of this and talking about, we know the symptoms of lactose intolerance. I know them: diarrhea, stomach pain, cramping, intestinal bloating, flatulence. Like it's not awesome. So what happens is, as undigested lactose moves into the large intestine, water enters to reduce the lactose concentration, producing diarrhea and bloating. And then the lactose is eaten by microorganisms in the large intestine. So it's a really sort of uncomfortable process, to say the least. So in these studies that this microbiologist is referencing, he is talking about how there is research showing that symptoms of lactose intolerance can be relieved by some people who change the population of their intestinal microbes. Interesting. To encourage lactose digesting bacteria. specifically this bacteria called lactic acid bacteria, eats the lactose, but produces the byproduct lactic acid instead of gas that causes the bloating and the flatulence. So the adaptation of the intestinal microbiome may be how some of the ancient pastoral populations with no genetic evidence of lactase persistence tolerated a dairy-rich diet. Interesting. So if we ingest lactic acid bacteria, which Alexandra, in your brilliant research before we started, found that lactic acid bacteria is mostly sourced from vegan sources, it's vegan. You take that as a probiotic, and it can alleviate some of the symptoms of lactose intolerance. But these bacteria from the lactic acid may not persist in your colon. So a new strategy that they're devising is to feed the lactic acid bacteria a complex sugar that they can digest, but humans cannot. And in initial clinical trials, human subjects using this prebiotic reported improvements in lactose tolerance and had a corresponding shift in the contents of their intestinal microbiome. Now, does that mean I'm going to run out and I'm going to go get this new lactic acid bacteria and the complex sugars that feed it injected into my microbiome, into my large intestine? Probably not, because it's interesting. I've talked to friends about this very casually, and they said, if there was a way for you to not be lactose intolerant, would you be happy about that? Like, would you be happy being able to eat cheese and ice cream and crepes and all those things again? I've had friends ask me, and I said, no, not really, because maybe had you asked me that in the 90s, maybe I would have said yes. But the moment we're in now, Alexandra, of the incredible innovations in vegan products that are out there with cheeses and yogurts and ice creams and certainly plant-based milks, I'm never like, I really want a Havarti, or I really want a Humboldt Fog, or God, I wish I could just have, that chocolate eclair in that cafe in France. It's just, in the year 2025, I feel no deprivation whatsoever, and certainly no desire to have my lactose intolerance reversed.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm an ethical vegan first, so it's against my ethics to eat anything with dairy in it anyway. But I think the interesting thing about this subject, even though for me, the idea of becoming able to digest lactose so you can have some milk or ice cream is not a great healthy thing for people. What I'm learning is that the microbiome is so important in terms of how you process what you ingest, and that we can, if we change the microbiome, we can change how we feel after eating certain foods, or maybe even, as we've discussed, the microbiome affects your mood, and so many things. So that's a really exciting thing to know, is that the more we learn about the microbiome, the more that we can help humans and animals, I guess, our own animals, be healthier and feel better.
Yeah, and I think there's so many plant-based sources to feed that microbiome. We talk about fermented foods like sauerkrauts or coconut yogurts, plant-based yogurts. We think about prebiotic fibers, which feed the probiotics in our gut. We know that tubers and root vegetables, whole grains, we think about things like yacon syrup as a sweetener, all amazing as prebiotics. So there are ways to create healthy gut flora and a healthy microbiome without relying on animal products to do it.
I don't know what that yacon sweetener is.
Oh, it's amazing. So I'm into, as a chef, I'm into really interesting new ingredients. And many years ago, I was exposed to this tuber that grows in South America called yacon, Y-A-C-O-N. And they will actually press this tuber and get a syrup out of it called yacon syrup. And it sort of has this molassesy, thick, rich texture to it. I use it instead of molasses or maple syrup, but it has prebiotics in it, which again helps to feed the probiotics in our microbiome. So I'm a huge fan of using that as a sweetener alternative.
Oh, and do we get it in a liquid form, or do we have to buy the yacon and do it ourselves?
Yeah, we get it in a liquid form. It's pretty difficult to find.
You get it from Erewhon, right?
They do have it at Erewhon, but that's not where I buy it. That's not where I buy it, because I know I'll be paying triple the price. You can get it online. There's a few sources, superfood companies. It's really difficult actually to find at even a natural grocer because it's not a popular sweetener. It's not something as common as, say, a coconut sugar or a maple or even a monk fruit. So if you're curious about yacon syrup, I would probably order it online.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thank you. Well, Jason, gosh, it's been great hanging out with you. And next week, we hope Dotsie will be with us. But thank you for all the amazing information you shared, and very excited to hear about what goes on with you in the next few weeks and months as you make this transition out of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Alexandra. Always a pleasure. Good having you back. And you guys will definitely see a different background soon. I don't know where that background's going to be, but on to the next adventure.
But same cat meows. If anybody was hearing cat meows, same kitty meows, luckily, right?
Always kitty meows.